Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I'm Dr. Debbie Silber, and today's guest is Dr. Mary Sanders. With a wealth of experience as a self-employed medical intuitive and chiropractor, Dr. Mary is deeply committed to guiding individuals on their journey of personal transformation. She focuses on helping people cultivate thriving health, happiness, and purpose through the powerful tools of energy medicine, spiritual embodiment, and meditation. Dr. Mary hosts the internationally acclaimed podcast Energy Medicine, which discusses everything related to aligning the mind, body, and spirit. Today we're joined by Dr. Mary Sanders to explore the intersection of betrayal, chakras, and energy medicine. Dr. Mary will share her unique insights into how energy centers are impacted by betrayal and trauma, revealing powerful methods for healing and reclaiming balance in our lives. Whether you're familiar with chakras or just getting started, this conversation will definitely support your healing journey. Here we go. Okay, everybody, we have Dr. Mary Sanders with us today. We are talking about betrayal and the chakras, but we did do an episode that was similar. Dr. Mary is going to be bringing in some different elements to it because there's so much we can learn and gain the more we know about the chakras and energy medicine, the more we can help heal. So welcome, Dr. Mary.
Thank you so much, Dr. Debbie. It's my honor to be on the show and to be with you and the listeners. I'm ready for a very juicy conversation.
Okay, great. So first, tell us, what are the chakras? And I know, like I said, we did do another episode on this, but I want your interpretation of the chakras. Even if we could go even a little more broad and start out with energy medicine. What is energy medicine? Then we'll get to the chakras. Then we'll get to specifically how it relates to betrayal.
Sure. I think that's a wonderful place to start because it does come from the belief system. Energy medicine comes from the belief system that we are part of something that is much larger than ourselves. And within that element, there is an electromagnetic component that connects us with all that exists. Energy medicine is any modality that is going to balance, harmonize, and cleanse, clear, and charge the electromagnetic field that runs within us and surrounds us. The space surrounding us is known as the biofield or the aura, and it is something that is responsive to the environment in which we live. And so as we age, as we live through life, as life happens, there are various different environmental conditioned responses or events or circumstances that we may find ourselves in that will violate or penetrate the energy surrounding our physical body. Once the violation or the energy goes through the various layers of the biofield, it will then be picked up in the energy center known as a chakra, which essentially is a vortex, a wheel of energy. And that energy will get assimilated and it will get digested, if you will. And then once you're ready to respond, it will send out electromagnetic signals out into the environment. So the energy centers are responsible for assimilation, for processing and expressing of our life force energy.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. And, even before we dive in even further, what would have you move into a topic like this? What was your interest? And I think I read that you were a medical intuitive. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate question. Many people, you should have questions when it comes to what does a medical intuitive do? And really, from my perspective, it allows me to hold space, sacred space for other people within my strength. I have over 30 years as a practicing chiropractor. I have an emphasis in positive psychology, and then I actually trained to enhance my intuition. So I have taken my strengths. One thing that I will share with you in the audience is that I was born hearing impaired. So my hearing capacity is 50% what the normal person hears. And so I came into this world being compromised in some way with the traditional five senses. And it allowed me to develop additional senses above and beyond the traditional five senses in order to survive, in order to assimilate information in the environment. So early on, by the age of 3, I was already very tactile. I was using my hands, touching my hands, and I knew that my psychometry was coming online, which was just the ability to perceive and receive information through my hands. And then I also became just like a little sponge. I started to develop my clairsentience at a very young age so that I could discern emotions that were possibly in my environment in order to survive. So again, it's just combining all of the various different wheelhouses that I have, and I show up as a medical intuitive for people these days.
And for those who aren't familiar, let us know what you mean. Please share even more about when you say information was coming through your hands and clairsentience.
Yeah, psychometry is, you've heard about it or maybe have read about it, where somebody could possibly pick up a pen that they found at an antique shop, in an antique shop, and then they can know and sense the person who that pen belonged to. So they receive information from an object via their hands. That's not what psychometry, that's not how it shows up for me. I can literally physically feel vibrations. I can physically feel where people are holding pain patterns or discordance within their physical body. Now, granted, and I'll share a story. This will kind of shed some light on it. I was raised Catholic, and we would go to 5 o'clock Sunday Mass or Saturday night Mass. And I would stand in the pew between my mother and my father, and I would hold their hands. And I literally would play the game because obviously I was hearing impaired, could not hear the guy that was standing up in front of us. I had no idea what he was saying or what the purpose was. But my little game that I played as a small person is I would hold my mom's hand in the right hand, and I would literally like pretend that I was zapping my mom's energy, and I would run it through my physical body, and then I would zap my dad. And then I would take my dad's energy, run it through my body, and zap my mom. So I was literally playing and manipulating energy between these two people and acting as a conduit. Now, did I know as a small person? No, I did not know what I was doing. I was just passing time. So those were skills that I developed as a direct result of being hearing impaired.
And what were you feeling when you were doing it?
Oh, it's just like electricity. It's for me something that is that's a really good question. I don't know if anybody has ever really asked me that, but I physically can feel vibrations.
Mhm.
So when I hold space remotely for patients now, and I use my hands and point it back out towards the patients, I will get various different sensations. Like, for example, if I feel like a person is heavily medicated
Mhm.
and they are possibly on anti-anxiety or antidepressive medication, I sometimes feel kind of a sideways frequency through my palm, kind of a chevron kind of image comes to me. Like I get that kind of a tactile sense in my palms.
Mhm.
Or if I sense that people are carrying the emotions or carrying other people's energies within their biofield or their physical body, I will get tingling in my fingertips.
Mhm.
So I've learned over the years that these various different sensations mean different things for individuals.
And can you sort of turn that on or and turn it off, or it's just on all the time?
Well, I am very mindful about turning it off.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, I really don't want to go through life and that level of sensitivity. It's a lot of information to receive. So, I will set the intention when I know that I'm holding sacred space for another person to expand my field, to enhance my intuition. And then when I'm done with the session, I neutrally separate. I literally gift back the energy that belongs to the people, and then I receive what belongs to me, and then I neutrally separate. I am no longer connected energetically to that person. I'm
Okay.
very
So like we're having a conversation right now. Are you feeling, let's say, my energy, or is it just like a regular conversation?
both. Both. It's somewhat difficult for me. This is an entrainment. You and I are synchronizing into harmonizing our frequencies, for the purpose of obviously connecting with the listeners and delivering content. So we are harmonized or entrained to a certain degree. So I get some information, as I'm sitting here and I can see your field and your vibrancy and your beauty and your essence. I see and feel that. So, but am I picking up specifically what's happening within your physical body via clairsentience right now? Not necessarily. That's something that I reserve the right to do, if you will, when I'm holding space for another person. And that's what makes, again, that's a strength of mine, where I can physically feel what's happening within another person. And then that's what guides my direction into the various energy centers that are important for them.
Beautiful. Okay. So now someone who's been betrayed, you're having, let's say, a session with them. Where would you feel that? How would you feel that?
Yeah, most often the first thing that shows up for me, Debbie, is the feeling of ungroundedness, like the inability to truly sink in into trust. And when I say trust, I'm talking about the capital TRUST, like really trusting that you will always be loved, nurtured, cared for. Those are really big elements of trust that a lot of us don't have. And especially those that have experienced a betrayal on some level, I believe that there's a sense or an element, and this again is your strength. You've done the research on betrayal to know that abandonment comes up, as far as knowing where one's placement is. Like, what's my placement in a one-to-one relationship? Where is my role in a family dynamic? Where is my role within a community? Where is my role within a tribe? And having that trust and that security to really sink in and just trust in something that's much greater and larger than yourselves, and know that you'll always be taken care of. So I see that happening, and that comes from the space of the first chakra located deep within the pelvis. And most intimately, the endocrine gland that gets stimulated or overdriven in this case is the adrenal glands. And so it sets the stage for somebody who's experienced trauma, such as betrayal, for their central nervous system to be dysregulated, to be more in a sympathetic dominance. And in my world, I believe, and I think in your world as well, we believe that if somebody really wants transformative, lasting, sustainable change and transformation, the parasympathetics need to be activated. And so that's the first thing that I typically see is the distortion of the central nervous system, the dysregulation, and possibly the downregulation of the first chakra. And then from there, Debbie, it shows up as kind of a pattern, if you will. There are certain energy centers that light up for me.
And even before we dive in a little bit deeper, let us know what that, please share with us what is, if you can explain the first chakra, that root chakra. What does it do? How does it look when it's in, let's say, good shape necessarily, and when it's really affected by betrayal?
Yeah, the first energy center, located deep within the pelvis, is most intimately connected with survival, safety, trust,
Yeah.
and prosperity. And so those are emotional, well, those are themes that show up for people. And then there is an endocrine gland that's associated, the adrenal gland, which I've already talked about. The body regions that show up is anything from the butt, thighs, knees, ankles, and feet. So when people are experiencing like sciatic issues, knee issues, ankle issues, plantar fasciitis, varicosity, those kind of physical things show up. Emotionally, it's rooted in fear. And so oftentimes people are fearful of the unknown, and they actually have anxiety, perhaps career stress, or difficulties in trusting in relationships.
Mhm.
So when it's healthy, obviously there's a certain amount of prosperity, there's a certain amount of trust, there is a certain amount of resourcing for safety and allowing we know how to self-soothe, so to speak. Those are some healthy expressions of the first energy center.
And it makes total sense when you think about it. Betrayal absolutely shatters our sense of safety and security, which is an absolute basic need. It's like the bottom has bottomed out on us. So no surprise that the bottom, the root chakra, would be so deeply affected. So okay, so the root chakra is affected. How then does that impact the other chakras? And what else do you see in the physical and emotional body?
Sure. The connection that I see, I would like to make for everyone listening is that there's a hormonal connection. The endocrine glands are definitely imbalanced. And for those of you listening, the endocrine glands are just responsible for your hormonal production. And I'm not talking about just the reproductive hormones, I'm talking about all the hormones that are necessary for survival. So the sleep hormone, the thyroid hormone, the pituitary, the thymus, the pancreas, the ovaries, and the adrenals. And so, consequently, when the adrenals are dysfunctional, then it leads me to look at some of the other endocrine glands. And oftentimes, I know we're heading down this path, but oftentimes I will then see the third chakra light up in those that have experienced betrayal. The third chakra is all about sovereignty. It's about autonomy, individuality, control, and it's about your self-confidence and your self-worth. So when an endocrine gland in the first chakra is somewhat depleted or underactive, it begins to create a distortion also within the space of the third chakra. So again, I see the theme of betrayal, and again, this is your area of specialty with your training to know that oftentimes, if betrayal has literally the bottom has fallen out, literally with the root chakra, it's then going to compromise your sense of autonomy or sovereignty. So that's where the third chakra comes into play.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense because everything comes into question. And so often someone feels, what did I do? What did I do wrong? And their confidence is shattered, their sense of self, their sense of worth, all of it. So that makes total sense. And it's interesting too, because I see in the PBT Institute community how so many people the how their hormones are affected, where all of a sudden everything was fine and now they think they're in perimenopause or menopause, and it's really the hormones are so dysregulated because of the stress and the trauma. So that is completely aligned to what I see. So what happens beyond that?
Well, we take it one step deeper. We then dive into the big question of, am I worthy of love? Am I, what is the definition of love? If this person said they loved me and then they betrayed me, who defines it and what does it mean? And so then we start to dabble into and explore the space of the fourth chakra, which is associated with the heart. And everybody says, oh, yes, I know the fourth chakra. That's all about love. Yes, it is. And it is also about compassion for self, compassion for others, self-love. And then when we start to dig a little bit deeper, then we may find some wounds around there about perfectionism. If we are, if we're questioning whether or not we're lovable, maybe if we're better at something, more perfect at something, then we're going to receive the love that we desire in order to create the safety within our lives. So that's kind of the sequence that I see that lights up energetically. Now, there are some additional energy centers that come into play, but routinely, that's what I see when I'm holding space.
And I'm sure I shared this on other episodes. I remember after my own betrayal, I remember saying, my heart hurts. my heart hurts. And then I remember it felt physical. I had never felt anything like that, where I felt this physical, besides the mental and emotional, the physical heaviness on my heart. What can you explain what that is as far as the chakras go?
Yeah. I'm so glad that you're bringing up because it does create a somatic visceral response within the body when an energy center goes through a large expansion or, in what you're experiencing, a large contraction. So the energy center, I'd like to offer up the analogy of the like a colander, a vegetable colander that you would steam vegetables in a pot at night, broccoli, cauliflower, whatever. And you know how the apparatus is designed to cave in on itself, and then when you open up the basket of the colander, it somehow fits the container that you're putting it in. And so I believe now there are no muscles that make the energy center close or open, but due to life experience, conditioned responses, trauma, your body will respond accordingly and the electromagnetic field changes, and you will physically, palpably feel that contraction like, ah, that hurt. And so there's not a logical explanation, but it's like the pit in the stomach, or I have a feeling in my gut, or, oh, wow, that's hugely expansive in my throat. People say these things without even having a foundation of what chakras are, what energy medicine is. The human body never ever ceases to amaze me. And the fact that we can store so much energy and trauma within the physical body and it changes the openness or the aperture of the chakra system, that's a game changer.
You know, it's so true. And I'm one of those people who feel things so physically. The emotions quickly manifest physically, and I'll never forget that physical physical pain in my heart. So okay, so now we understand the chakras and what happens after betrayal and how they're impacted. What can we do? What can we do
Yeah.
about it? Because of course there's the mental and emotional things we need to do, but as I'm sure you've heard as well, the issues are in the tissues. What do we do about all this?
Yeah. It is counterintuitive, to be honest with you, Debbie. I know you see this. And when you're holding space for a client and they say, oh, goodness God, I feel so much tension in this area, so much pain, so much discordance within this area. Very few people want to lean into pain or discordance. They're going to do everything that they can to avoid it because there is information in the tissue that wants to be processed and received. And so that's a really fine dance. And it's a dance in which we can gently hold space to lean into the discordance and then find a different area in your body that has more spaciousness. And then we go in, we look, we ask, we sense, we see, we say, and then we come out of it. So I kind of look at it like this, Debbie. I think of it like, we're going to go do our wash. We're going to take all of our laundry. We're going to put it into this machine that we add soap to, and then they're going to put water into it. And then this machine is going to go round and round and round and round and round and round and round. And then the water is going to drain out, and all the particles in the debris of the dirt are going to drain out with the water as well. So there are modalities, ways that we can increase the spin of a chakra in order to release any and all discordant energy which no longer serves that person in present time. And it's done by intention, it's done by deep meditation. Sometimes it's done with rewiring neural circuitry with bilateral stimulation for the neurology. There's many different ways that we can approach it, but the intention and the idea is to cleanse and to charge that energy center in order to retonify it so that it can open and close accordingly.
How do you know if one modality is working over another? Like you mentioned a few different things, let's say meditation and binaural, I know, let's say EMDR or something like that. How do you know what's making the difference? How would the chakra start to look, or what would you see, or what would the person feel?
Yeah. I think the person that is having gone through the modalities is is the first person to comment.
Mhm.
Hey, Mary, I really don't know what you did the last session, but since I've seen you last, I have a newfound appreciation for my art. Or I'm tapping into creativity. Or, hey, Mary, since our last conversation, I found that my conversation with my parents is less triggering. I find myself getting less defensive. And each person, literally, and Debbie, everybody's so beautifully unique, right? Everybody is so beautifully unique. So I truly do not know until I connect with that person what is going to serve them to their highest good. I kind of have to step aside. My analytical brain has to step aside, and I just have to sense and say the information that's delivered to me. Now, am I always right? I think that there are so many modalities out there. There's so many different ways to skin a cat. I think it's all right.
Yeah, there are so many great modalities out there, and it's true. And I always mention there's, like, everybody has their own unique recipe. Do you find that someone with, let's say, lifelong trauma, they're going to have a harder time, or it will take longer, or is it a matter of greater willingness? What's the difference between someone with, let's say, trauma since childhood, and someone who's just had a more recent experience?
I would venture to say that somebody who's had a more recent experience has more resources. And what I mean by resources is that they have a cellular memory of what a nurturing environment is, or a nurturing person, or a protective person, or somebody who is safe, or a safe environment. Somebody who has had chronic, repetitive, lifelong trauma sometimes does not have those resources that we may take for granted. And so we get to reestablish, like when I say resources, when I talk through various different energy systems that we have available to us, I try to make it neurologically available for the patients to tap into that frequency so that they can literally tap in what it feels like to be loved and nurtured and caressed by the earth frequency,
Mhm.
or what it feels like, the resources of what it feels like to be energetically full of themselves and full of vitality. So I think that this to distinguish a recent trauma versus something that's been, multiply, repetitively ingrained within the tissues in the energetic body. I think that there is just a difference in the amount of resources that they have stored within their central nervous system.
That makes so much sense. So, I always try to get into the minds of my listeners, viewers, and I imagine some of them thinking, okay, well, this sounds great and all, but what can I do on a daily basis to even know that I have, let's say, trauma stuck in my tissues? And what could I begin to do about it?
Yeah. The first thing that I will say is that energy is not bound by time nor space. And so via your beautiful creative imagination, you can shift your energy field through a guided meditation. We both have plenty of resources for guided meditations that set specific intentions to help support the electromagnetic balance within one's system. So we can even say, okay, so imagine that washing machine image. Let's do that for the individual energy centers. Let's drain out all that debris, that gunk, that mucus, that dirt, the cloudiness or that stuckness. And then, so you start to go through those imaginations on a consistent and daily basis. You are making a positive impact. That's something that an individual can do without the assistance of, somebody holding their hand. It's very empowering.
And I just want to share this with everybody. There are people, I'm one of them, where you may search for the right pill or injection or whatever. And like, I remember I had such severe back and neck issues, and I tried everything. And what worked The best for me, and still wasn't great, but what helped the most was Reiki and cranial sacral therapy. They weren't barely touching me. So just, I want to make sure everybody knows, don't disregard something just because you don't have a shot or a pill to deal with it. Sometimes these energetic modalities are not only as effective or so much more effective. Like I know with me, I'm a perfect example of that, where those types of modalities work so much better for me. So for everybody listening or watching, it may be something for you as well. So Dr. Mary, what do we need to know as we start wrapping things up?
Um, I think this is just to go back to what you were saying, because you so beautifully said that just because you don't have a personal experience with something, if you're intuitively led or your curiosity has the best of you and you're questioning, hey, could this modality be of some benefit? I invite you to follow and to listen to your intuition. Okay. What may have worked for your neighbor or your best friend may not work for you. So this is your own journey. And when it comes to betrayal, there's so much that happens when you're empowered to take your own energy back and to be in the driver's seat of your healing journey.
And you can heal from all of it. Dr. Mary, where do we go to learn more about you and the great work you do?
Oh, thank you for asking, Debbie. I think the best way to connect with me is via my website, which is www.drmarysanders.com. And you'll notice that people can do one-on-one sessions, or there are group environments specifically to connect into the somatic wisdom, to listen to the body and to receive information. And then also on the website, you'll see the links for the various different episodes of our podcast, Energy Medicine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, thank you. I'm sure you shared so much. I know you shared so much with our audience, and I'm sure they got so much out of it. Thank you so much. I hope you gained valuable insights into how trauma affects your energy centers and practical steps you can take to heal and transform. Stay in touch with Dr. Mary by going to drmarysanders.com, and we'll have all of her information in the show notes at thepbtinstitute.com/podcast. Here's my biggest takeaway. Betrayal doesn't just impact us mentally and emotionally. It lodges itself in the body, and it's just as important to address as everything else. Like the show? Please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with a friend. You never know that one nugget someone hears that can change their lives. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to be with you next time, and here's to your breakthrough.